So good afternoon to all of you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Till now only 13 students have joined. Is this the situation is same for all other classes?
14-15 জনকেই জয়েন করেছে।
বাকিরা কি ছেড়ে দিয়েছে নাকি কি অবস্থা?
জানি না, হোয়াটসঅ্যাপ গ্রুপেতে 21 জন আছে, কিন্তু
হুম,
জয়েন করার
সেই জন্যই জিজ্ঞাসা করছি। আউট অফ 21, 22, 22 কোথায়? ডেটাবেস তাহলে তো 22. Anyway, so in last class we have basically discussed about the basic of wave propagation in the anisotropic media, and in this part we basically discussed about the dielectric tensor, and we have seen that the dielectric tensor is Hermitian in nature. Then most probably we have discussed about the wave propagation in anisotropic media, the derivation of wave equation, and from the wave equation we have discussed about how we can draw the normal surface. In normal surface, most importantly you have to know the optical axis, and if light propagating through the optical axis, then there will be only single phase velocity, and if it is if the corresponding electromagnetic wave or light propagates along any other direction, it will phase or it will exhibit two different phase velocities for two different shells. So that was the discussion in last class. Now, depending on the basic knowledge on normal surface and the optical axis, now we will first discuss about the index ellipsoid. Then, depending on the index ellipsoid and the number of, that is basically the relation between the refractive indices and the number of optical axis, how we can define the anisotropic media or the crystals in different category that will be discussed, as well as we will discuss the wave propagation in the corresponding different types of crystals like uniaxial crystal and biaxial crystals. And we will discuss about the corresponding double refraction phenomena also. And if time permit, I will discuss about the optical activity and the Faraday rotations. So let's start with the index ellipsoid. PPT is visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Now, before going to the structure about the corresponding index ellipsoid or how we can find out this index ellipsoid, we have to know what is this particular index ellipsoid. So from the name of this particular point, it is clear that its structure should be in form of ellipsoid, and it is basically the plot of index of refraction with respect to the polar, or you can say as a function of the polarization angle. Is it clear? Index ellipsoid is basically the plot of index of refraction as a function of the polarization angle, and it is mainly used to find out the two indices of refraction. That is the main function. So first we will discuss how we can draw the index ellipsoid, and from the index ellipsoid how we can find out the two indexes of refraction. So to draw the corresponding index ellipsoid, or to consider the corresponding structure, we start with the energy density. Stored electrical energy density, UE. UE means half of E dot D. That particular equation we have used several times earlier. So we have directly started with this particular point, that is the stored energy density in terms of electric field. And this stored electric field, electric energy, we are considering that it is uniformly distributed. So from the basic equations we can write down that as D equal to epsilon Ej or epsilon E. We can write down this one, half of Ei epsilon Ij Ej. So it is basically, this particular relation is representing a surface of constant energy density UE. A surface of constant energy density UE in this D space. Now we can rewrite that as we are mentioning that the corresponding surface is basically a constant energy density surface in the D space. So we will now convert this equation in terms of D. So from this equation, E equal to, you can write down that D by epsilon. So using D by epsilon, we can write down this particular equation in this particular form. Dx square by epsilon x, d plus dy square by epsilon y plus dz square by ez, that is equal to UV. UV is the stored electric energy density. Where this epsilon x, epsilon y and epsilon z, these are the principal dielectric constants. Now we are replacing this particular term, that is d by 2 root of UV by r vector, by the position vector. And as we know, the relation between the principal refractive index and the dielectric constant, that is nx equal to root of epsilon x by epsilon 0. Similarly ny, that is the refractive index along y, so it is root of epsilon by epsilon 0, and nz equal to root of epsilon z by epsilon 0. So with these two consideration, d by root of 2 ue equal to r and nx equal to this, ny equal to this, then we can rewrite this equation in this particular form. That is x square by nx square plus y square by ny square plus z square by nz square, that is equal to 1. So for what about this equation, what about this general equation? This is the general equation for an ellipsoid, where the major axis of the ellipsoid are parallel to the x, y and z axis, correct? And the length of the corresponding ellipsoid along the x, y and z, that will be 2nx, 2ny and 2nz respectively. So this equation is basically representing a general equation of an ellipsoid, where the major axis of the ellipsoid is along the direction of the principal axis x, y and z respectively, and the length of the corresponding ellipsoid along x, y and z will be 2nx, 2ny and 2nz, where nx, ny and z, these are the principal refractive indices. So we have seen that if we consider the uniform stored electric energy density in a particular D space, it is representing a ellipsoid. That thing I have already mentioned. So ellipsoid is basically the plot of index of refraction as a function of polarization angle, and it is mainly used to find out the two indices of refraction and the two direction that is associated with the D. So with the help of ellipsoid, which is nothing but the plot of index of refraction as a function of polarization angle, we have considered the uniform stored electric energy density, and we have seen that it is representing an ellipsoid. So this ellipsoid is known as the index ellipsoid, because from this index ellipsoid you can easily find out the two indices of refraction, as well as we can find out the two directions of the D vector that is associated with the two independent plane waves. Now the question is the structure of ellipsoid. The structure of ellipsoid is familiar to us. Now from this ellipsoid, how can we find out the index of refraction and this direction of D? So from the index of refraction, index ellipsoid, now we have to find out the two indices of refraction and the two directions of D. For that purpose, what we have to do, so every details is written. It will be helpful for you. There will be no need to supply the Xerox copy of my note. From this PPT itself, you will be able to prepare for the corresponding this particular subject. So first, you consider this is suppose the corresponding ellipsoid that has been drawn, considering the uniform energy density, and that is basically the plot of two indices of refraction as a polarization angle. Now to find out the two refractive index and the two directions associated with the D, what you have to do, you have to draw an ellipse. This particular ellipse is known as the intersection ellipse. You have to draw an intersection ellipse. What should be the condition? That intersection ellipse that must be passes through the center of the ellipsoid. You can't draw this particular ellipse, intersection ellipse, at any arbitrary point. You have to consider this intersection ellipse at the center of the ellipsoid. That means that intersection ellipse must be passes through the origin of the index ellipsoid. The second condition is that intersection ellipse, the surface of this intersection ellipse, that must be perpendicular with the direction of propagation. So is it clear? First, you draw the index ellipsoid from the plot of index of reflection, or from the, you can say, from the uniform distribution of the stored electric energy. Now you, in this particular index ellipsoid, you have to draw a intersection ellipse that must be passes through the center of this index ellipsoid, and the second condition is that must be perpendicular with the direction of propagation. Now you consider the two axes of this intersection ellipse. The axis of this two intersection ellipse will give you the directions that are associated with the D1 and D2, and the length of these two axes will give you the two refractive index that will be equal to 2n1 and 2n2. That means from the length of these two axes you will be able to find out the value of 2n1 and 2n2, and correspondingly you will be able to find out the value of refractive indices n1 and n2. So this index ellipsoid and the purpose of index ellipsoid is clear to you, I think. Index ellipsoid is basically the plot of refractive indices as a function of polarization angle, and it is basically used to find out the two refractive indices and the two directions that are associated with the D1 and D2. That is the basic thing about the index ellipsoid. Then how we can draw the index ellipsoid? We have to start with the stored electric energy UE. We are considering the uniform energy density. The energy is uniformly distributed over the d space, and we have seen that uniform distribution of stored electric energy, it is representing an equation of ellipsoid. So from that equation you can easily draw the corresponding index ellipsoid. Now from the index ellipsoid you have to find out the two refractive indices and the two directions of propagation associated with the d1 and d2. So to find out these parameters you have to draw an intersection ellipse. That intersection ellipse must be passes through the center of the index ellipsoid. That means you can say the index ellipsoid, center of the index ellipsoid and center of this intersection ellipse, that must be same, concentric. Secondly, that particular surface of the intersection ellipse, it will be perpendicular to the direction of propagation. Once you draw this particular intersection ellipse following the two conditions, then you will be able to find out the value of the refractive indexes from these two axes of the intersection ellipse, because the length of these two axes will give you the value of 2n1 and 2n2 respectively, as well as the direction of the corresponding axis will give you the directions that are associated with the d1 and d2. So I think now it is clear to all of you regarding the index ellipsoid and its applications. Now this basic discussion, now we are moving to the classification of the anisotropic media. Now we are familiar with the two things about the wave propagation in anisotropic media. Number one is the normal surface, second one is the index ellipsoid. From the normal surface we can get good amount of information about the wave propagation in the corresponding anisotropic media, because from the normal surface you can get idea about the position of the optical axis as well as the structure of the corresponding two surface, whether the two shells are sphere or one is sphere, another is ellipsoid. That idea we can get from the corresponding normal surface. Secondly, from the index ellipsoid we can easily find out the two indices of refraction and the directions of that are associated with the d1 and d2. Now with this basic knowledge about the wave propagation in the anisotropic media and the corresponding structure of the normal surface and the structure of the index ellipsoid, now we can classify the anisotropic media in three basic categories depending on the relation between the refractive indices, that is relation between the nx, ny and nz, and depending on the number of optical axes. As per our previous discussion on the normal surface, we have seen that there may be maximum two optical axes. If we consider the overlapping of two shells, there may be maximum two optical axes, and depending on the shape of the two shells, the optical axis may be 1. So depending on these two parameters, that is the relation between the refractive indices nx, ny and nz, and secondly depending on the number of optical axes, we can classify the anisotropic media or crystals into three broad categories. One is called anisotropic media or isotropic crystals, uniaxial crystal and biaxial crystal. So now we will discuss in detail one by one about the isotropic, uniaxial and biaxial crystals. So isotropic crystal means, in case of isotropic crystals, all these three principal indices are equal, that is nx equal to ny equal to nz equal to, you can say that is equal to n. So now if you want to find out the dielectric tensor for this type of isotropic material, so for the isotropic material or isotropic crystal, the first point is that all the principal refractive indices are equal, that is nx equal to ny equal to nz equal to n. So we can easily write down the equation of dielectric tensor, because we are already familiar with this particular term, dielectric tensor. In that case it will be epsilon equal to epsilon 0, as all the refractive indices are equal, so it will be n square n square n square. So in case of isotropic material, isotropic crystals, basically all three principal indices are equal. That is the first point, all three indices are equals. Now what about the normal shell, sorry, what about the normal surface? Any idea?
Coincide.
Correct. In case of isotropic crystals, the two shells of the normal surface will be coincide, or you can say that will be degenerated to a single sphere. There will be no ellipsoid, two shells will be sphere. Next one is that two shells will be degenerated to a single sphere. So if I ask what should be the number of optical axes?
1.
धीमे बोलो. Optical axis means
0.
two shells are degenerated. Okay. First of all, in case of normal surface, for an isotropic material, isotropic crystal, two shells are sphere, and they are degenerated to a, this is, you can say this is the first sphere. Then I am considering another color to draw the second sphere. As you have already told that it will be coincide. Coincide means the two shells are degenerated to a single sphere. Now how can we draw the optical axis? To draw the optical axis, we have to consider the center of these two shells, and we have to draw the line between the overlapping point of the two shells and the center of the two shells. So that is the rule to draw the optical axis. Now you told me what should be the number of optical axis for the isotropic crystal. Two shells that are sphere in nature, they are degenerated, or you can say they are basically to overlap with each other. So overlap hole, what is the number of crossover points? Hello.
The infinity.
Infinity. Then what should be the number of optical axes?
Infinity.
Every line you draw that is passing through the center, that will represent an optical axis. That is the beauty of isotropic crystal. So whatever the direction of propagation of light through an isotropic crystal, that means it is passing through the optical axis. And as per our previous discussion, any wave that is propagating through the optical axis, that will exhibit a single phase velocity. Clear? So in case of isotropic crystals, all the principal indices are equal. That's why that will be the corresponding dielectric tensor. then the two shells that should be sphere in nature and they will be overlap with each other. So each and every line that will be passing through the center of the normal surface, that will represent an optical axis. That means there are infinite number of optical axes. So there is no, you don't need to worry about the direction of propagation. If any light enter into an isotropic crystal, it will exhibit a single phase velocity. So in case of if you are doing some work with isotropic crystal, then there is no need to worry about the incidence angle. Whatever be the incidence angle or whatever the direction of propagation, it will face the single phase velocity. Next come to the second type of crystal. It is uniaxial. So uniaxial means obviously what should be the number of optical axis? Optical axis will be 1. If optical axis is 1, and another point is that regarding the principal indices, two principal indices will be equal, that is nx equal to ny, but that is not equal to nz. Now you have to consider the basic equation of the normal surface, that is the equation number 1 that we have discussed in the last class. On that particular equation, you have to put two conditions, basically in place of nx and ny, in place of nx and ny, in place of nx and ny, as they are equal, you have to put in O, and for nz you have to put ne. Okay, where this relation is known to you. So n0 square equal to epsilon x by epsilon 0, that is equal to epsilon y by epsilon 0, and n is epsilon z by epsilon 0. So in that case, if you simplify this equation, you will see that one shell of the normal surface will be a sphere, and another surface will be an ellipse. So if this is the number 1, shell number 1, that is the shell number 2 of the normal surface. So as per the definition of uniaxial crystal, as nx equal to ny, but that is not equal to nz, and we are representing nx equal to ny by n0 and the third one by ne. From the basic equation of the normal surface, if you derive that equation, simplify this equation, you will see that the normal surface will consist of one sphere and one ellipse. So obviously what should be the dielectric constant of the dielectric tensor? Nx equal to n0 square, ny equal to n0, and nz equal to ne. So that will be the corresponding dielectric tensor. And now, as the number of optical axis is 1 in case of uniaxial crystal, so what should be the combination of this one sphere and one ellipsoid? Because as per the discussion, we have seen that it will consist of one sphere and one ellipsoid, and there is one optical axis. So how can we draw this one? See, this is your sphere, and there will be one optical axis, so another shell will be ellipse. Now this is the common center point of the two shell. These are the two crossover point. So now if you draw a line considering these 3 points, so that will be the optical axis, and that will be the corresponding structure for a uniaxial crystal. Now this, as we have considered that Nx equal to Ny equal to No, that No is representing the, it is called the ordinary index, and Ne, the refractive index, Nz, that has been considered as Nz. Nz equal to Ne is considered, it is called extraordinary index. Why it is called ordinary and why it is called extraordinary, that will be clear when we will discuss about the wave propagation or light propagation through an uniaxial crystal. And this crossover, you see that crossover point or the common point, that is considering along the z axis. That is another point. Two shells, one is sphere, another is an ellipsoid. We are considering the common overlapping point along the z axis, so it has a single optical axis. Now depending on this relation between N0 and Ne, we can again classify this uniaxial crystal in two types. One is called positive uniaxial crystal, another is negative uniaxial crystal. Positive uniaxial crystal means these extraordinary indices will be higher than the ordinary indices. That means the ellipsoid, particularly this is the case of positive uniaxial crystal. In that case, Ne is greater than No. That means the ellipsoid of the corresponding normal surface is larger than the sphere. Now the reverse is, that means if Ne is less than No, that means your ellipsoid is smaller. Ellipsoid is smaller means ellipsoid should be within the sphere. How can you draw it? Once again, first you draw the ellipse in case of negative uniaxial crystal. Now you have to draw the sphere, as it is the case of negative uniaxial crystal. So sphere will be within the ellipse. কি করলাম, ভুল করলাম, সরি, ভুল হয়েছে। ellipsoid Ne is less than, so ellipsoid will be within the sphere. Better to move to this one, negative uniaxial crystal. That is the case of negative uniaxial crystal. This is the sphere. The outer one is the sphere, and inner one is an ellipsoid. So that is the case of negative uniaxial crystal. That is the case of positive uniaxial crystal. Now, is there any doubt regarding the normal surface drawing for the uniaxial crystal, particularly for positive and negative uniaxial crystal? We are classifying the crystals or anisotropic material depending on the number of optical axes and the relation between the refractive indices. In case of isotropic crystal, all the principal indices are equal, that is Nx equal to Ny equal to Nz equal to No. So the two shells are sphere in shape and they will overlap with each other. So it has infinite number of optical axes. Next, in case of uniaxial crystal, first of all, the number of optical axes will be 1, and it will consist of one sphere and one ellipse. Now, depending on the size of the ellipse and sphere, The uniaxial crystal may be positive uniaxial crystal and the negative uniaxial crystal. If sphere is within the ellipse, that means N is greater than NO, then that will be the case of positive uniaxial crystal. That is N is greater than NO. Now if your N is less than NO, that means the ellipsoid is within the sphere, then that will be the case of negative uniaxial crystal. So we have used two terms, one is refractive index is extraordinary and ordinary. We will discuss in detail about these two terms. Now before that, next come to the point of biaxial. Now in case of biaxial crystal, obviously what will be the number of optical axes? Number of optical axes should be two optical axes, and in that case the refractive indices, that is Nx, Ny and Nz, they are not equal, all are different. That is Nx not equal to Ny, Nx not equal to Ny, that is not equal to Nz. So for the biaxial crystal, what will be your dielectric tensor? Simply Nx, Ny, Nz. Three different refractive indices. Now, as it is consists of three different refractive indices as well as two optical axes, so what about the normal surface? For the biaxial crystal, it will consist of two ellipsoid. One is this one, another is this one. Now, if you consider the crossover point between the two shells, there are total 4 crossover points. Now if you draw the line that is passing through this crossover point and the center, you will get two optical axes. One is this one, another is this one. There will be two optical axes. Now come to the point about the ordinary and extraordinary refractive indices. Yes, it's a double section. Now we are basically defining these refractive indexes. One is extraordinary and ordinary. That is depending on the propagation of the light, whether it is propagating through the optical axis or through any other axis. Okay. Now this ordinary refractive index means, or you can say that is the ordinary ray. If the light passing through this optical axis, then it will be called ordinary ray. Why it will be called ordinary ray? Because as we have already discussed that if any light passing through the optical axis, what will be its phase velocity? It will exhibit single phase velocity. That is the normal case. That's why this kind of the light or wave that will be propagating through the ordinary optical axis, it will provide or exhibit the single phase velocity. So the corresponding wave or light is known as the ordinary ray, and it will exhibit the index of refraction that will be known as the ordinary refractive index. Clear? So ordinary refractive index means the refractive index that is exhibited by the ordinary ray. Ordinary ray means the light or electromagnetic wave that is passing through the optical axis of the crystal. When the light or wave, electromagnetic wave passing through the optical axis means it will exhibit the single phase velocity. That's why it is known as ordinary ray. Now, if any other ray or wave that is passing through any other axis that is also passing through the center, so this is not the optical axis. This, if light passing through this particular line, it is not the optical axis, not the optical axis. Now on this particular surface, k value is different. On this particular surface, k value is different. So it is k1 and it is k2. So depending on the k value, phase velocity will be different. So it will, the corresponding ray or the electromagnetic wave will exhibit two different phase velocities at the two different surfaces. So any light that is not passing through the optical axis of the crystal, that will be known as extraordinary ray. Clear? Any light wave or electromagnetic wave that will be passing through any arbitrary axis which is not the optical axis of the crystal, then it will exhibit the two different phase velocities at the two different surfaces of the normal shell or normal surface. So the corresponding ray or wave is known as extraordinary ray, and the corresponding refractive indices, it will depend on the direction of propagation. So the corresponding refractive index is known as the extraordinary refractive indices. Clear? So in that case, in case of extraordinary ray, in case of extraordinary ray, the index of refraction, it basically the function of propagation angle, it becomes the function of propagation angle, at which angle it is passing through the crystals. Angle means with respect to the z axis. This optical axis, as per this drawing, this optical axis is along the z axis. So in case of extraordinary ray, the index of refraction, it will be the function of angle of propagation, which is not true in case of ordinary ray. If you have any doubt regarding this classification of crystals, you can ask me. If you have no doubt, then I am moving to the next part, that is the double refraction phenomena. Double refraction phenomena, basically the what will happen if wave passes through the this type of uniaxial crystal or biaxial crystals. In case of uniaxial crystal, we will observe one kind of phenomena that is known as double refraction. In case of biaxial crystal, we will observe another kind of phenomena that is known as conical refraction. So let's move to the second part. So with this basic knowledge about the normal surface, index ellipsoid, and the classification of the crystals, now we discuss about the wave propagation through an uniaxial crystal. So we are considering in that way. First we will discuss the general case, then we will move to the special case of uniaxial crystal. So we are considering there are two surfaces with two different refractive indices or two different k values. This is the surface 1, this is the surface or shell number 2, and this is the boundary line. So now we have to consider the refraction phenomena at this boundary of this anisotropic medium. So we are considering that a plane wave incident on this boundary of the anisotropic media. That means this lower half is representing the anisotropic media, upper half is representing the isotropic media. That is Ni, where the refractive index is Ni, and in the lower half it is representing the anisotropic media. Now in the anisotropic media we are considering the two concentric surfaces with two different K values. Now as per the refraction, so once the corresponding plane will be incident on this boundary, it will be refracted and it will follow the Snell's law. So if this incident angle is theta 0 and the corresponding k vector is k0, or the propagation vector is represented by k0. Similarly, for the two surfaces on the in the lower medium or in the anisotropic medium, we are considering this is k1, this is k2. So that means if they follow the Snell's law, then it will be k0 sine theta 0, that is equal to k1 sine theta 1, that is equal to k2 sine theta 2. So this equation, it looks like the Snell's law. Okay, so we are considering the refraction of EM wave or light waves at the interface of the isotropic materials and the anisotropic materials. As a part of the anisotropic material, we are considering two concentric surfaces. Now we see that in case of, though it is look like this k1 sin theta 1 equal to k2 sin theta 2, but this k1 and k2 are not constant. It depends on the direction of propagations, because if these surfaces, if these two concentric surfaces are sphere, then k is constant for any direction of propagation. And what about the if the corresponding surface is ellipsoid? Okay, this point is clear. If this particular surface that we are considering two concentric surfaces, if they are sphere, then this k1 and k2 are constant. But if the corresponding surfaces are ellipsoid, then what about this k1 k value? That k value is no longer constant, rather they will depend on the direction of propagation. For example, if I draw at this particular point one ellipse, then I think it will be more clear. Both these two surfaces are look like sphere, but now say I am considering one ellipsoidal surface, the cross section of one ellipsoidal surface. Then you told me what about the k value for this particular ellipsoidal surface. If the light propagating or reflected at this particular direction, then it is k2. But if the corresponding light refracted at this direction, then you can say it is k2 dash. If the corresponding refracted wave move along this direction, then what will be the k value? K2 double dash. Now you told me what about this value of k2? K2, k2 dash and k2 double dash, are they equal? Obviously no. So in case of ellipsoidal surface, this k value is no longer constant, rather they depends on the direction of propagation. So in case of uniaxial crystal, one will be sphere, another will be ellipsoid. So for one shell or one particular surface, your k value remains constant. Whatever your direction of propagation, k1 will remain constant, because k1 is nothing but the it is representing the radius of the corresponding surface. But for the another surface, that is particularly for the ellipsoidal surface, that k values are no longer constant, rather they will change with the direction of propagation. So that is that particular discussion has been mentioned in this particular slide. That is, in case of uniaxial crystal, one particular shell of the normal surface is sphere. That means the corresponding wave number k remains constant. It will not depend on the direction of propagation, and the corresponding wave, that will only follow the Snell's law, n sin theta equal to n0 sin theta 0. But for the other wave, other reflected wave, for the ellipsoidal surface or ellipsoidal shell, it will not follow the Snell's law. What is clear? So there is another difference between the ordinary ray and extraordinary ray. Ordinary ray will follow the Snell's law, whereas the extraordinary ray will not follow the Snell's law, because in case of extraordinary ray, it is basically due to the ellipsoidal shell or ellipsoidal surface, where the wave number, that is k, is no longer constant, rather they depends on the direction of propagation. So in case of uniaxial crystal, after refraction you will get two waves. One will be called ordinary wave or ordinary ray, another will be called extraordinary. Ordinary means due to the spherical surface, and extraordinary means the wave that is due to the ellipsoidal surface. Okay. So ordinary ray, as ordinary ray is due to the spherical surface, so for the spherical surface k value is constant whatever the direction of propagation, so it will follow the Snell's law. But in case of extraordinary ray, this k value is not, this k1 and k2 are not constant, they will depend on the direction of propagation vector. So now come to the case of positive uniaxial crystal and the negative uniaxial crystal. So in case of uniaxial crystal, as per our previous discussion, the one shell is sphere and another shell is ellipsoid. So in that case, the ellipsoidal shell is outside the sphere. So you can say this is the case of positive uniaxial crystal. Now you draw the corresponding bi-diffraction phenomena, double diffraction phenomena in case of positive uniaxial crystal. This is your incident wave over this particular boundary line or boundary surface. This is the isotropic materials. This is the anisotropic materials. In case of anisotropic materials, we are considering the case of positive uniaxial crystal. So we have to first draw the normal surface. It consists of one spherical shell and another ellipsoidal shell. Now you draw the refracted wave. The refracted wave corresponding to the spherical, it will be the ordinary wave or ordinary ray. We are considering the angle is theta 0. So this particular ray will follow the Snell's law. You can write down n sin theta is equal to n0 sin theta 0. Now in case of extraordinary ray, that is the ray refracted wave or refracted ray due to the ellipsoidal shell, and the corresponding angle of refraction is theta e, particularly for this particular direction, and the refractive index is Ne. So Ne will be equal to Ni sin theta I will not be equal to the Ne sin theta I, because this theta Ne is no longer constant. Ne is no longer constant, because it depends on the direction of propagation. Because for this particular point, at this particular point, k value is something, say it is k2. But if you consider the refracted wave at this particular point, this k2 dash, these are k2 and k2 dash, they are not equal for the ellipsoidal shell. So it will not, this particular wave or wave will not follow the Snell's law. Same thing in case of negative uniaxial crystal. Negative uniaxial crystal means NE is less than NO. NE is less than NO means the ellipsoid will be within the sphere. The ellipsoid will be within the sphere. The ellipsoidal shell will be within the sphere shell. Outer one is the sphere. So whatever your direction of refracted wave, N0 is constant because it is facing the same k value. So in that case, Ni sin theta will be equal to N0 sin theta 0. This particular wave will follow the Snell's law, but this extraordinary wave or ray will not follow the Snell's law. This particular phenomena in an uniaxial crystal will exhibit this type of refraction phenomena. One refracted wave will follow the Snell's law, but the another refracted wave will not follow the Snell's law. That's why this type of phenomena is known as double refraction in case of uniaxial crystal. Now if I ask if the material is, if this particular surface or this particular is isotropic material, then what will happen? There will be any existence of extraordinary wave or extraordinary ray. If you consider this refraction of light or refraction of electromagnetic wave in an isotropic crystals, will it exhibit the double refraction phenomena?
No such Snell's law follow করবে আর
Yeah, as both the shells are sphere and they overlap with each other, so there is no question of extraordinary. The refracted wave will follow the Snell's law. That is the difference. So in case of isotropic materials, the refracted wave will follow the Snell's law, but in case of uniaxial crystal, we will get two refracted wave. One is extraordinary, another is ordinary ray. Ordinary ray will follow the Snell's law, whereas extraordinary ray will not follow the Snell's law. I think it is clear to all of you. Next, so we'll basically observe the double refraction phenomena in case of light propagation or wave propagation through an uniaxial crystal. Now we have to consider what type of optical phenomena we will observe if we consider the propagation of light wave through a biaxial crystal. As we know, biaxial crystal means there are two optical axes and all the refractive indices, principal refractive indices are not equal. That is Nx not equal to Ny, that is not equal to Nz. There is no need to discuss this particular point. Directly goes to the phenomena. Now, in case of double refraction phenomena, we will observe the one kind of refraction that is known as conical refraction. Okay. So first, you have to draw the normal surface for a biaxial crystal. So we consider one spherical shell and another elliptical shape. as the nx not equal to ny not equal to nz, so we can consider this one. One shell is sphere, another shell is ellipsoid, and they basically cross over with each other at 4 different points. So considering the four crossover points, we can draw the two optical axes. These are the crossover point 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can draw the optical axis. This is passing through the center, though this is not as per the scale. Basically, that this is a particular wave is not along the optical axis. This particular wave is along the optical axis. So only the one optical axis is shown here, but another optical axis is not shown in this particular drawing. You can draw it. This is the another optical axis. And this is the another optical axis that is already drawn, but only the half portion. So these are the two optical axes. Now first we will discuss about the wave propagation along the any arbitrary axis. Okay, so any arbitrary axis means that is not passing through the optical axis. So we are first considering that the light is propagating along this particular line, that is OS. Light propagation along the line OS. So at this point, what should be the k value? Say for the ellipsoid it is k1, for the spherical it is k2. So it is mentioned that k1 will be equal to n1 omega by c, n1 will be k2, k2 will be equal to n2 omega by c. That means that thing we have already discussed. So if any light or any electromagnetic wave that is passing through the biaxial or uniaxial crystal, but the light is not propagating along the optical axis, then it will face the two different phase velocity. Why it will face the two phase velocity? Because of the two different k value. When it is crossing the ellipsoid, its k1 is n1 omega by c, so its corresponding phase velocity relation is Vp equal to omega by ks. So for different k value, it will phase at this point, its phase velocity will be say Vp1. At this point, the phase velocity will be Vp1. That is known to us. If any light which is not passing through the optical axis, it will face the two different phase value. Now we have to mainly consider this particular phenomena particularly in case of biaxial crystal. What will happen if the light passes through passes along the optical axis? That is the phenomena that you will observe, that is known as conical refraction. Why it is called conical refractions? So when we have to consider the propagation of energy, when wave is propagating in a particular direction, that means we are considering the propagation of energy. How we can find out the propagation of energy? Suppose this is one particular surface and light is propagating along this particular line. So how we can find out the direction of energy flow? That is the Poynting vector. Anyone?
E cross H.
E cross H is equal to E cross H, but at a particular surface, if you want to find out the direction of S, you have told
Into
the
D.
value S equal to E cross H, it is correct. Now at this particular point, what should be the direction of S? How you can find out that one? by drawing a unit vector. Unit vector means you have to draw now this is the normal. This particular vector is normal at this particular point, correct? So to draw the direction of direction of energy flow, or basically that to draw the unit vector for any arbitrary surface, I think we have discussed it in the basic of EM theory. For any arbitrary surface, if you want to draw the unit vector, how you can draw the unit vector? Suppose this is the structure of the corresponding surface. Unit vector ta ki hobe? At any point you have to draw the unit vector.
So perpendicular to the surface.
So say at this point you have to draw the unit vector. At this particular point you have to draw the unit vector. Similarly at this particular point you have to draw the unit vector. So basically you have to draw the tangent at this point. First you will draw a tangent at this point, then you draw a perpendicular line to this tangent. That will be the corresponding normal vector, direction of normal vector. Similarly, if you have to draw the unit vector at this particular point of the surface, again you draw the tangent to this surface at the corresponding point, then you draw a perpendicular line to the corresponding tangent. It will give you the another unit vector. Say it is N1, it is N1 and it is N2. Okay. So that is the process to draw the unit vector to a particular point or to a particular point on the surface. Now we come to this particular point. Now you have to apply this. Basically, you have to apply this particular concept at this particular point. This is the crossover point of the spherical and ellipsoidal surface. The light is passing through this particular optical axis. That means at this crossover point, the energy associated with the corresponding light wave or electromagnetic wave that will follow the Poynting's theorem, and this direction of energy flow will be perpendicular to the surface. Now, as this is the crossover of two shells which are not similar in nature, one is ellipsoid, another is spherical. That means in practice you have to consider more number of points that are very close to this crossover point, and for each and every point now you have to draw the unit vector. So for example, if you want to draw the unit vector corresponding to this ellipsoidal surface, draw only, it is better to draw only two unit vector corresponding two surfaces. So at this crossover point, sorry, at this crossover point there are two surfaces. One is along the ellipsoidal, and there is another surface that is corresponding to the sphere. So if you draw the normal corresponding to the surface along the spherical shell, that will be the direction of unit vector. Now if you draw the unit vector considering the ellipsoidal surface at this crossover point, what will be your that will be the direction of unit vector. So this is the unit vector corresponding to the ellipsoidal shell, and this is the unit vector corresponding to the spherical shell. So for the simplicity, I have just represented two unit vector. I have drawn two unit vectors at this crossover point. Now, if you consider the more number of points that are very closely spaced to the actual crossover point, what you will find? You will find that after refraction, or at this particular crossover point, due to this type of two different shape of the surfaces, the energy flow will form in a form of conical structure. So one conical structure will form by these unit vectors. By these unit vectors means these unit vectors are nothing but the direction of energy flow. Due to the propagation of wave. Is there any confusion regarding this conical kind of energy flow at the crossover point? We have first considered the biaxial crystals that consist of one ellipsoidal surface and one spherical surface. We are considering the propagation of light through the optical axis. As we know, the light propagating or electromagnetic wave propagating through the optical axis, it will face only one phase velocity due to the single k value. But at this particular crossover point, if we consider about the energy flow due to this propagation of light wave or electromagnetic wave, it will not flow in a particular single along a single line. Rather than the energy flow will be formed in a conical form. So that's why this type of diffraction phenomena is known as conical refraction. If you try to draw it in your own, you will be able to realize how this conical kind of structure will form at this particular crossover point. One is spherical shell, or you can say this is the crossover of two shell. So you have to draw a normal at this. If you draw a normal corresponding to this surface, that is along this direction. If you draw a normal corresponding to this surface, it will be along this direction. Now in practice, you have to consider more number of points that are very close to this particular crossover point. So in that case, basically you can draw more number of unit vector, considering the more number of points which are very close to each other to this crossover point. That means the unit vectors will form a conical structure. That means the wave that is propagating along this optical axis will transmit or will passes through this uniaxial crystal, and the corresponding energy flow will be in the term of conical form. That's why this kind of refraction is known as conical refraction. Now if you have any doubt, you can ask me. You have no doubt. Good. Okay, next. So better to cover the next two part. Next two part means only the two phenomena. One is known as optical activity, another is known as Faraday rotation. Faraday rotation is basically the special type of optical activity. Now, optical activity means basically the in certain type of media, particularly in case of anisotropic media, it is found that when light propagating through the corresponding media, the plane of polarization will rotate. So, if due to the propagation of EM wave or light wave through some kind of materials, the plane of polarization is rotated, the corresponding phenomena will be known as optical activity. That is defined in this particular form. So in certain optical media, it is found that it causes the rotation of plane of polarization, That means plane of polarization will rotate when light or EM wave passes through the corresponding medium. That means if there is any rotation of the plane of polarization due to the wave propagation through a particular media, the corresponding phenomena will be known as the optical activity. So the crystal-like quartz and other materials, they are basically helical molecular structures. That is the most important point. If their molecular structure is helical, then it will exhibit the optical activity. The figure of the corresponding optical activity is shown in the next slide basically. So how we can measure the amount of optical activity? Obviously with the help of the amount of rotation of the plane of polarization, and this amount of rotation will be proportional to the path length of the light in the corresponding medium. That means how far the light enters into the media, or how far the light propagates into the corresponding media. On this particular point, your amount of rotation of the plane of polarization will depend. So if we say what should be or how we can measure this amount of rotation. So amount of rotation we can measure in terms of degree per centimeter or degree per unit length that is covered by the corresponding wave into the corresponding media. So conventionally it is this rotatory power. Optical activity means that is the rotation of polarization, plane of polarization. So this rotatory power of the corresponding medium, it can be measured in terms of degree per centimeter or degree per unit length. So that means the rotatory power of such kind of optically active medium is measured in terms of degree per unit length. So in that case, it is considering that way. Suppose this is the corresponding optically active media with certain length. This is the direction of propagation. Say the total length is L. This is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. As we know, in case of plane of polarization, we basically considered the electric field vector to identify the plane of polarization or the state of polarization. As the wave or this light beam enters into this particular media and it is propagating along the media, the electric field vectors are rotating. I think from this diagram itself it is clear. These are rotating as it is moving through the media. So there is total. So what this length, the total rotation is, what will be the amount of rotation? Amount of rotation কত হলো? 90 degree. As per my drawing, over this particular length or due to the propagation of this light wave, over this length of this optically active material of length L, the plane of polarization has been rotated by 90 degrees. Now once again, depending on the sense of this rotation, it can be classified as right-handed. So to an observer that is facing the approaching light, if the rotation is clockwise, anti-clockwise or counterclockwise, then it will be called right-handed polarizations. Once again, you can apply the right hand thumb rule and left hand thumb rule to identify the sense of polarizations. So these are the different materials that basically exhibits the optical activity. So what do you mean by optical activity? Optical activity means simply the rotation of plane of polarizations when the wave passing through such kind of materials. Suppose the light is passing through such kind of material where the plane of polarization is not rotating, then the corresponding material will not be called the optically active materials. Optically active materials means the materials through which, if light or electromagnetic wave passes, there will be the rotation of plane of polarization. Then only you can say the corresponding materials are optically active materials. So the best examples of optically active materials are quartz, sodium, sugar, and celluloid. So these are some example of optically active media, and you can measure the amount of rotation, amount of rotation of the plane of polarization with this particular equation, pi by lambda NL minus NR. So these are the refractive index at two different length or at two different end. So in case of optical media, that is the general case. Optical activity means we are considering the rotation of the plane of polarizations when light passes through the corresponding media. We can measure it in terms of degree per unit length. Now if I ask that, suppose the wave start to propagate from this point A, it reaches to point B, then it again reflected back due to some reflector. Then due to the optical activity, what should be the amount of rotation? Due to the optical activity, it completely depends on the direction of propagation. Correct? It completely depends on the direction of propagations and the length into the corresponding materials. So for this type of wave propagations, that is, if we consider the reflection and it again reflected back to the starting point, then in that case the total rotation will be 0. In case of optical activity, what happens? The direction of rotation, it basically bears some kind of fixed relation with the direction of propagation. That's why if the beam of the light or beam of the electromagnetic wave is reflected back to the same point or to the starting point, then what should be the net rotation? I am asking of the net rotation. So the net rotation will be 0. You can think the wave starts to propagate from this point and it is reflected from this point, and after reflection it goes to the starting point. So what should be the net rotation? the net rotation will be 0 because there is a specific relation between the amount of rotation and the direction of propagations. That will not be true in case of the special type of optical activity that is known as Faraday rotation, because in case of Faraday rotation, that is also the case of rotation of the plane of polarizations, but not due to the this particular point, but it is basically due to the induced magnetic field or induced static magnetic field. It will depends on the direction of induced magnetic field B. So in case of Faraday rotation, if you consider this kind of reflection in the Faraday rotation, the net rotation will not be 0. You can say that the net rotation will be 0. The main source of this optical activity is basically the induced dipole moment. Induced dipole moment in the molecule.
So excuse me, NA लेना थी,
Huh?
NA और NA.
That is the refractive indices at two end,
Okay.
left right.
Okay.
So source of this optical activity is basically the induced dipole moment. I think it is little bit hazy. Induced dipole moment into the molecule, and in this induced dipole moment due to the changing magnetic flux through the helical molecular structure. That is the source of optical activity. We know what is the main source of polarization. Main source of polarization is the charge. Now, in case of optical activity, if you consider the induced dipole moment of the corresponding molecule, induced dipole moment due to the which one? Due to the changing magnetic flux. So it will change the corresponding polarizations. As the main source of polarization is the charge. Now, if that particular molecule there is a dipole moment is induced in the corresponding charges or in the molecular structure due to the change in magnetic flux, so there will be change in the, or there will be rotation in the plane of polarizations. Now come to the next one, that is the special type of optical activity that is known as Faraday rotation. That is also the case of rotation of the plane of polarization, but in that case the situation is quite different. If you place that type of optically active material under some magnetic field, so that means we are considering the propagation of light wave or the propagation of electromagnetic wave through an optically active materials under the influence of magnetic field. We have placed the optically active materials under the magnetic field, then we are considering the propagation of the light wave or electromagnetic wave. In that case also, the plane of polarization will be rotated, but it will depends on the magnetic field. Okay, so this rotation will be proportional, the amount of rotation or the power of rotation, it will be proportional to the component of magnetic field, not in আগের ক্ষেত্রে for the normal in general case optical activity means আমরা কি দেখলাম last for the optical activity the amount of rotatory power or amount of rotation was proportional to the, or is proportional to the length of the wave into the corresponding materials. But in case of Faraday rotation, the amount of rotation of the plane of polarization, it will be directly proportional to the component of the magnetic field. Component of the magnetic field that is in the direction of propagation of the light wave or the electromagnetic wave. So that's why in that case the gyration vector. Basically, the rotation means we represent it by the gyration vector. So that gyration vector for the rotation of the plane of polarization is directly proportional to the magnetic field vector B. In that case, this gamma is known as the magnetogyratron coefficient of the medium. So G equal to gamma B. So the basic difference I think clear. Faraday rotation means we are placing some optically active materials under the influence of magnetic field. Then we are considering the phenomena of light propagation or electromagnetic wave propagation through the corresponding optically active materials. In that case also the plane of polarization will rotate, but in that case it will be directly proportional to the applied electric field or the component of the magnetic field along the direction of the propagation, not the other component. It will only proportional to the component of the magnetic field which are in the direction of propagation. So that's why in that case the amount to represent the rotation, we can represent the gyration vector. So the gyration vector will be proportional to the applied static magnetic field B. So in case of this is also on case of optical activity. It is also another case of, we can define this Faraday effect by another kind of optical activity, because this is the rotation of plane of polarizations. So the amount of rotation rho is directly proportional to the applied magnetic field B. So in that case G is another constant that is used, that is Vardet constant. So basically the Faraday effect originates from the effect of static magnetic field. Effect of static magnetic field on the motion of electrons. So in presence of this electric field, when we are considering some optical beam, that means there are some electric field also, or we are basically considering the optical beam in terms of electric field and magnetic field components. So when we are considering the propagation of optical beam or light wave or electromagnetic wave, there is some electric field. So in presence of this electric field of the light wave or electromagnetic wave, the electrons will be displaced from the equilibrium position. Okay. Now due to this displacement of the electrons from their equilibrium position, so this motion of the electrons, it will be coupled with the applied static magnetic field. When this motion of the electrons will coupled with the static magnetic field, it will create a lateral displacement of electrons due to the Lorentz force B cross B. So when we are considering the movement of light wave or electromagnetic wave under the influence of magnetic field, that means now we have to consider the motion of electrons under the influence of this static magnetic field. So this electric field of the corresponding light wave or electromagnetic wave, that will be coupled with the displacement or that will be so due to the electric field, it will be displaced from their equilibrium position. So depending on this Lorentz force V cross B, so due to the velocity of electrons and under the influence of static magnetic field, if we apply the Lorentz force, there will be displacement of the electrons from their equilibrium positions. So following the Lorentz force equations, we can say that if the wave, electromagnetic wave or light wave propagates under the influence of magnetic field, there will be a displacement of the electrons from their equilibrium position. That is the main point. So as a result, what will happen? It will induce some dipole moment. It will induce the dipole moment, and that induced dipole moment, obviously it will be proportional to the B cross E. And that's why in case of Faraday rotation, this displacement vector is related or written in terms of these equations: epsilon E plus I epsilon 0 gamma B cross E. Now this term or factor I is basically used to represent this pi by 2 phase difference between the velocity and the electric field. So that thing I have already discussed that. So in case of, so if you now compare the Faraday rotation, so in case of Faraday rotations, it is basically proportional to the static magnetic field under which we are considering the propagation of light wave, whereas in case of optical activity, it is proportional to the k vector, or the direction of propagation. So if we consider the double passing means that is the reflection. The wave transmitted from, say, this is from this starting point to some end point, and then it is reflected itself to the starting point. So that is called the double passing. So the material will exhibit the net zero polarization rotation from the optical activity point of view. So if you measure the amount of rotation of the plane of polarization from the point of view of optical activity, the net rotation will be zero, because it depends on the, or it proportional to the k, direction of propagation. Whereas in case of Faraday rotation, it is proportional to the applied B vector, applied magnetic field. So in case of this type of double passing, so in case of Faraday, it will be double. It will double the rotation. Amount of rotation will be double in case of Faraday rotation. That is the basic difference between the optical activity and normal optical activity and the Faraday rotations. Normally, optical active medium means plane of polarization, rotation of the plane of polarization, which is proportional to the direction of propagation, and it depends on the length or the depth of the propagation. Whereas in case of Faraday rotation, we are considering the propagation under the influence of applied static magnetic field. In that case, the amount of rotation is proportional to the B vector, or the induced the applied magnetic field vector. So if we consider the case of double passing, the amount of rotation from the point of view of optical activity, it will be zero, but in case of Faraday rotation, it will be twice. So that's all about this particular module, and the wave propagation in anisotropic materials. From the next class, we will discuss about the next module, that is the computational methods, different types of computational methods, that is method of movement, then finite element method. So I will share this presentation on this particular note to all of you at the end of this class. Okay. Now, if you have any queries or doubt, you can ask me. Anyway, so next, if you have no doubt, please come to the attendance. Ovik present. Ovik is absent. Suyoshi. Present or absent? Suprabha.
Yes, sir.
Next, Sumit.
Yes, sir.
Aditrik Ghosh. Argodev.
Present, sir.
Abhishek.
Present, sir.
Suman Chaudhary. Babita Das.
Yes, sir.
Musarraf Ajam. Present. Next, Shomili Datta. Absent. Indrajit Maiti. Onabil Chakraborty.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next, Sujanda.
Yes, sir.
Devanurak.
Yes, sir.
Windrila Shur. Present or absent? Absent. Next, Surojit Pikadar. Absent. Present.
Present, sir.
Present, sir.
Present, sir.
Okay, ঠিক আছে অসিত দাস.
Present, sir.
Okay,
Present.
Sudeep Malakar.
Present, sir.
Present. Aditi Bhomik.
Present, sir.
Present. Tuhin Prosun
Yes,
Sarkar.
sir. Yes, sir.
Biprojit Roy. Absent. That's all. ওকে, সো তোমাদের বাকি ক্লাসগুলো সব শুরু হয়েছে? হ্যালো,
হ্যাঁ স্যার, ম্যাটল্যাবের ক্লাসটা এখনো শুরু হয়নি, বাকিগুলো মোটামুটি হয়েছে।
ম্যাডাম মানে ল্যাব তো?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ।
একে নেওয়া শুরু করেছেন?
না, স্যার।
আমি সাবজেক্ট ওয়াইজ বলছি সব কটা।
না, sir, ঠিক আছে। সো তো আমার যে মডিউলটা বাকি থাকছে কম্পিটিশনাল মেথডস, আই থিংক ইট নিডস 3 to 4 classes of 2 hours. ঠিক আছে, তাহলে লিভ করলাম। বাই।
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার।
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.